Chapter 54. Blue. I try not to slump as Master takes his time getting his house guest settled in the living room while I go to the kitchen to make tea. I was hoping for some peace and quiet once we got home. But now there are people here, and even the kitchen is not safe from outside eyes. As I make my way into the kitchen, the demon is following me. Permission asked and given. There's nothing I can do to get out of this. The most I can hope for is that the demon actually provides me with some help. My whole body aches, and a headache has been brewing behind my eyes for the past few hours. I'm tempted to ignore the demon entirely and just dive into the medicine box in the cabinet and find some of the pain meds that my master had pointed out for me, but I'm not sure how he'd take that. I don't know if the demon would tell on me for popping pills without my master present. I don't even know if master would be upset with me. I go to the lower cabinets and pull out the kettle, only to have it nearly fall out of my hands as I realize that the demon has followed, uncharacteristically silent, just inches behind me. Stars! I press one hand to my chest, clutching the kettle close so I don't drop it, muttering the curse more to myself than anything. He just blinks down at me strangely. His gaze is disconcerting to the point that I avert my eyes to try to escape it. I'm stuck between him and the cabinets, so I have no room to move. I wait for a tense moment. He's not closing the distance between us, but he's also not letting me out of the corner. I'm reminded of our impromptu kiss in the classroom. He had taken me off guard then, but I sincerely hope that this slow approach isn't his version of fair warning. I didn't think he meant anything by it at the time, just a way to provoke his master and use his innate abilities, but now I find myself reevaluating my assumptions. I try my best not to squirm under his gaze. I'm uncomfortable, and if he wants more of the same, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Your ears twitch a lot. He speaks, thoroughly destroying the tension of the moment. A shallow grin passes over my face as I let out a relieved breath. He just doesn't have a sense of boundaries, that's all. There's nothing sinister to worry about. Thank you. May I please pass by? I try to smile through his odd behavior. Just because I'm not feeling well doesn't mean I can be disrespectful to Master's guests. Words take a moment for him to process, but eventually he lets me go, backing away a few steps so that I can get around him. I watch him a little closer now that I know he can move so quietly. I try not to make it too obtrusive, and he doesn't seem to notice my eyes tracking him as he moves throughout the kitchen. I pour water into the kettle and watch his little self-guided tour through the kitchen. He doesn't share the unsteadiness I feel at his proximity. His movements aren't disguised. He's snooping. He's being deliberate, and there's nothing I can say as he makes his way through the room at a casual pace. He's not being subtle, though at this point I doubt subtlety is something he can accomplish. He moves some fruits around from where they sit in the bowl, and I have to repress my urge to snap at him. I force myself to stop tracking his progress in the room and focus on the task at hand. When the kettle is full, I allow myself to slam the top into the kettle just a little harder than is necessary. It doesn't do much, but there is a release of some of the tension I've been holding on to. It's unexpectedly satisfying. When I look back up, he's pressed himself against the counter. He's watching me closely, and it's a physical effort not to recoil. I didn't hear him move, but last I saw him, he was halfway across the room, not 2 feet from my face. He presses closer, very blatantly searching my face for my reaction. My heart is in my throat for a moment before he speaks. Are you still upset about that kiss? He asks, wide-eyed as though that is the most genuine concern on his mind. Either that is actually what he was going to ask all along, or he's trying to breach a less contentious topic first to warm me up to him. Either way, it does the trick and relaxes me. The tension of the moment is lost, and I can feel myself breathing again. That's not... I try to stutter through the nervous energy still bounding through my system. My hands are shaking, even though any perceived danger has passed. Something about him makes it hard to look away, but I know it would settle me if I could take a few deep breaths and come back to this whole bizarre scenario. Well, if you aren't caught up on that little thing... Something about the way he rolls his eyes makes me cut him off. It's not such a little thing, I snap at him. It really isn't. That little stunt could have been a lot of trouble. It could have been a real problem if I didn't have such an understanding master. When pets have a dalliance outside of their master's permission, it usually doesn't end well. At best, it's an insult when one makes such a flagrant display as he did, kissing me in front of both of our masters. We didn't have permission. It could have ended really badly if either of them wanted to punish us for our behavior. Well, it is to me. He quirks an eyebrow at me before a sly grin stretches across his face and he leans back into my personal space. It's just a part of my nature, he drawls in a low, husky tone, running his tongue over one of his more prominent, pointed canines. His eyes narrow and assess me with a gaze that I'm all too familiar with. He's trying to be alluring. That much I understand. But it's difficult to reconcile the image of this demon with the sexy piece of sin that he's trying to be. At the very least, the picture he presents is a very different one than was presented in the classroom. Really? Your nature that includes falling to pieces when you get the barest hint of affection from your master? I narrow my eyes and smirk back at him. Immediately, the facade drops, and the intense, smoldering atmosphere around him drops with it. Cheeky bastard did not play fair. I wasn't expecting it. He grinds his teeth, whining as his eyes go unconsciously to the doorway where we've left our masters. Mm-hmm. I roll my eyes and try to ignore the squeezing in my heart. It's funny, watching this from the outside. I don't know everything about their situation, but it is almost nice to see a familiar who's affectionate towards their master. Oh, like you'd do any better. You're smitten. He snaps with a pout on his lips. Any trace of a smirk that had worked its way onto my face drops at his words. I don't know what you're talking about. The words fall like a bad lie before I can stop them. They're too fast, too high-pitched. It's all wrong, and obviously so if the light in the demon's eyes means anything. I busy myself pulling cookies out of the jar and setting them down on a nice plate. I can smell it on the two of you. He crowds back into my personal space, leaning against the counter. Plenty of people find their familiars attractive enough. I stare straight ahead, speaking as tersely as I can. I'm not wrong. Plenty of mages find their familiars attractive enough for a fling, something easy and available at any time. The sex doesn't have to mean anything. The pounding in my head intensifies as I process that the only thing it really means is that you were there and available. It certainly doesn't carry the weight that he's trying to imply. I don't want to talk about this, and certainly not with this demon. I can't even sort it through in my own mind, let alone explain it to someone else. It was a mistake to engage with him. You're right, but I do know the difference between the types of attraction. There's a difference between lust and love. You, sir, are smitten. He smirks, stealing a cookie from the plate and popping it into his mouth. I stare up at him, my stomach turning as I try to process what's happening around me. How can he say something like that, so casually? What does this gain you? I find myself whispering under my breath, desperately trying to keep the anger from my voice. What? He has the audacity to sound innocent. What revelry do you get from rubbing it in? I can't keep the heat from my voice this time. I feel tears forming at the corners of my eyes as my hands form a white-knuckled grip on the cookie jar. It can't be that hard a question to answer. Why does he feel the need to aggravate the wound? Is it fun for him? Does he get some enjoyment out of this? Or is it just some extra piece of gossip that he can trade around? I feel my ears flatten, and I have to physically hold myself back from showing my teeth. I don't really care what he says about me. But all my failures reflect poorly on my master, and that's not something I'll tolerate. Whoa, dude, what the hell? His hands go up in a placating gesture, but it does nothing to stop the burning anger that's taken root inside of me. What do you want from me? Or is this just something funny for you and your master? I hiss with all the venom I can manage. It has the desired effect. The demon moves away, and I'm being quiet enough that I'm not causing a disturbance. His hands stay up in their defensive posture. He quirks a brow, and I watch the confusion bloom on his face. Dude, I don't care about your little romance. He rolls his eyes like it's nothing to be concerned about, like it's nothing wrong or foolish. It's dangerous, I respond numbly. What? He chuckles, the uncertainty still apparent, reflected in his eyes. He doesn't know what I'm talking about, some hysterical and giddy part of my brain realizes, and it feels almost as crazy as it sounds. What part of an illicit romance would be fine in his head? It's dangerous to think that way, to think that your owner has feelings for you, or you them. It's a mistake that only little kids are supposed to make. I remember when I started my training, some of the other kids had just been sold to a new owner, and it was always the hardest for them. In training, we're encouraged to connect our masters with safety, with consistency and control in our lives. It's easy to mistake the person who controls everything as the person who protects you. It hurt them, all the kids going through their first change of household. Kids can't reconcile why the person they'd convinced themselves they loved didn't actually care for them. Dude, that is fucked up! Enoki says it like it's a fact. It's too much to even try to respond to that, so I just shut my eyes against the pulse of pain in my head. My name is Blue. I speak quietly, realizing that I never gave him my name. Maybe that's when everything started getting fucked up. My master gave me a name, and everything's gone to shit. Nothing's ever hurt like this. But something about this name makes me feel more attached, makes it feel more like I have one body, not just scattered parts that only matter from moment to moment. I wonder if it would have been better to remain disparate pieces. It might have been better if I never had anything to attach me to the world, if I just kept moving around like vapor. Right. Blue. My name's Enoki. He smiles back at me weakly, likely concerned about my sedate tone after such an outburst. I heard your master. He named you after a mushroom? I give him a shaky smile, hoping that my tantrum hasn't caused some irreparable rift between us. Yeah, I told the dick to give me a name as pretty as my face, and he immediately went to Fungus. He speaks, coming closer to the counter again, hand straying for another cookie. You speak very casually of your master, I note absently, checking the heat on the burner and replacing the empty spots on the cookie dish before I start looking for a tray that could hold them. Well, I would say it's a little easier when your master is a prince, but really it's a lot harder. Everyone's watching, always, and it is honestly pretty shit, but he makes up for it. He keeps me out of the public eye when he can. I'm one of his closest friends by default. All the others that get close to him only do it for what he can do for them. Enoki explains, munching lazily on a cookie while his eyes trace my movements through the kitchen. It makes sense, in a perverse way. Oh! I know it's not much of a response, but it seems to be all the acknowledgement of attention that the demon needs to continue. He's quite literally stuck with me. I know way too much. Plus, he spent too much time with me. I'm stupidly endearing. He leans over, invading my personal space again and batting his eyes in some poor imitation of a demure action. I smile weakly, leaning away from his advance. "Oh, come on! You lot are such prudes, I swear!" He rolls his eyes and backs away, but I can see his smirk. Given his reaction to his master's advance, I doubt he would have followed through anyways. He probably likes the reaction he gets from his behavior more than anything else. I'm not a prude, I'm not used to... I feel the blush rising to my cheeks as I struggle for the right words. It's been a while. I eventually finish, settling for the truth. I wonder what he would think of me if he knew. If he knew I'm not a proper familiar. They're new to the school. They didn't see my abject failure. And as far as I know, Anarchy hasn't had the chance to socialize properly with the other familiars. He probably hasn't heard much about us. About me. He doesn't know my history as a plaything. He doesn't know anything about me. It really has been a long time since a kiss was the start of a greeting. I haven't had to think about it for a while. There was a time when I wouldn't have blinked at the invasion of my personal space. It's a harsh reminder. I am a whore. I got painted up and shoved into a new set of clothes, but it didn't change anything about the creature inside. Except the name, I suppose. Blue. That's the only thing that's really changed. And somehow I've managed to fuck that up too. I've messed up this shining new chance and dirtied it with the sin from my old life. Blue is treated like a person, not a toy. And I will never deserve that. I open the cabinets and run my hands over the ceramic mugs. We have several of the same color and shape. None of them will look out of place, but 4 cups or 2? I usually get to eat and have tea with my master, but I don't know the rules when there's a guest as well. Perhaps he wouldn't want us to drink with them. Or maybe Day has different rules. I doubt Master would want to offend his guest. "Dude, you all right?" I startle as Enoki reaches out and places a hand on my shoulder. I hadn't heard him come up, and I was so lost in my own thoughts that it's all I can do to jerk out of his grasp. Unfortunately, I lose my grip on the mug in the process. There's a loud crash as the mug shatters into dozens of little pieces, and I feel my heart stop. Fuck. There's no way they didn't hear that. My hands start trembling, and it's all I can do to repress the whimper that wants to make its way to the surface. I don't get to complain. This is my mess. I have to deal with it. "Jumpy." The demon sneers but pulls back his hand. I'm sorry, just a little out of it. His words snap me out of my daze. I fall to my knees, ignoring the twinge of pain that comes as I realize I've knelt on a couple of smaller pieces of ceramic, and begin picking up the pieces. My hands are shaking, and a couple of the shards puncture my skin before Enoki pulls the pieces from my hands. He just holds them above the mess, not releasing me or allowing me to continue fixing my mistake. Suddenly I'm back at my last master's house, kneeling in the shards of a plate that I'd broken. I feel the same cold, roiling fear in my gut as I had when my master abandoned me. It was just another stupid little mistake in a long line of stupidity. But for her it had been the last straw. She punished me for the dish, but even after that I couldn't convince her to keep me. I pleaded, I begged, and cried, but nothing I could do could convince her that I was worth keeping. It makes a little more sense now. We aren't supposed to lie to our masters, and I certainly wasn't worth keeping at the time, and nothing has changed. I'm still making the same stupid mistakes. I'm still trying to be something I'm not. I'm still lying about what I am. "Are you okay?" the demon asks. Anaki's voice pulls me straight out of the past. I can almost feel the tears streaking down my face, the stinging heat of the wounds on my back from the punishment I had taken at her hands. It's a shock to get thrown back into the present, where I'm kneeling beside a demon in my new master's house. "No," I hedge, not daring to raise my voice above a whisper. I'm cold all over, and my hands are still shaking. I don't know why Anarchy is still deigning to touch me. "Are you hurt?" He matches my volume, voice tentative in mirror of my tone. Hurt? There's a dull pulse of pain in my hands, and the stinging in my knees lights back up, as though it required my acknowledgement to make the wound ache. Still, I wouldn't consider myself hurt. I've had much worse than all of this. I know it's true, but my eyes still begin to water. I shouldn't be this weak, especially in the face of everything that I've already faced. I've done it all before. I survived this far. It should be easier now. There's only one answer for my behavior, but it scares me more than anything else. I'm malfunctioning, I admit, quietly, more to myself than Eneki, but he responds as though my answer was meant for him. "What?" He quirks his head to one side, confusedly. I take a steadying breath and try to push past the flashing images and sensations that threaten to drown me in my memories. "Just breathe," he whispers, pulling me close and holding me against the solid mass of his body. The warmth is unexpectedly settling. He's patient with me, holds me until the shaking leaves my limbs and I can breathe within a stable pattern again. He mumbles nonsense, telling a story of some incident at the palace where he'd broken something or other. I get the sense halfway through his rambling that it's more for him to say something than to have me listen to his tale. It's unexpectedly kind of him. I'm glad for the distraction as I come back into my body. I'm even more thankful that he didn't call our masters into the room to witness my breakdown. I feel my stomach turn, that nauseous, sinking feeling returning to my body. I was able to ignore it for a long time, but it's impossible to deny my condition anymore. It happens from time to time. I've heard about it in horror stories. It's something that happens to older pets, or when people get too injured and it starts to affect their head. I'm malfunctioning. I've taken one too many blows to the head, or maybe I'm just too old. Either way, the effects are still the same. My brain's playing tricks on me. Sometimes the world around me stops, becoming nothing more than a mess of jumbled stimuli. My mind wanders on its own, trapping and tripping me in mazes of my own thoughts. I'm a liability. Master has no reason to deal with me. I'm useless, and I'll do nothing but put Master at a disadvantage as he tries to advance in the world. Really, I should be glad for all the time I was allowed to spend with him. It's been a fucking dream by this Master's side. I've experienced things that I never thought could have been possible. But I guess it's time for the dream to end. There's a high-pitched sob that it takes me a moment to realize is coming from my throat. It takes me another moment to smother out the noise, forcing a burning, stinging pain down my throat along with it. "Are you all right?" Anarchy asks softly, apparently having finished his story while my mind was elsewhere. "No," I answer honestly, if a bit humorlessly. Anarchy's silent for a moment. He goes utterly still underneath me and my breath catches. It's pretty rude. The demon has done nothing but help. He doesn't deserve my harsh words. "I didn't mean to offend." The demon speaks up eventually. He's talking slowly as though he's dancing around a delicate subject. "Day says I have to work on that." I can't help but turn around in his grasp and stare at him. Is he serious? I'm the one who's broken protocol, not him. He may be a little abrasive, but he's done nothing wrong. "Yeah, look, I know I am crass, but I'm trying. Day says we need friends, especially since he can't really step in and protect me like he usually does." There's a faint blush that colors his face, and I have to smile at that. At least that makes a little sense. That's a good plan, actually. I pipe up, forcing myself into a standing position. If you'd like, I can introduce you to some of my friends. I make the offer casually, picking up the largest pieces of the broken cup and picking the worst out of my hand.
Really? That would be awesome. We haven't been here long, and our foster family is more content to keep us as little ornaments hanging in the house than actually let us socialize.
Enoki smiles at me, sweeping the last of the shrapnel off the floor. I move the kettle off the stove just as it starts to whistle, and pour the hot water out into a nice clay teapot along with a few spoons of a tea that I know my master likes.
Wait!
Enoki exclaims, nearly startling the kettle from my hands as I place it in the sink. What? I ask, giving him a quick once-over in case I've missed something crucial. The scratches on my hands are minimal and have already stopped bleeding, but my outburst forced Enoki on the ground with me as well.
This is a favor. A really awesome one, too, right?
He practically beams at me, his eyes wide and shining like they're trying to become a new sun in our sky. Yeah, I guess, I affirm cautiously. I'm not sure what exactly is happening, but I'm certain that I don't understand the full extent of my involvement. Even just the affirmation feels like an absurdly binding contract.
That means we're friends, right?
He smiles, halfway between a devilish smirk and the genuine, wide, toothy grin of a child. I mean, I guess. I smile a bit as I follow his string of logic. I suppose that we are friends now.
Yes!
He throws his hands in the air as if personally proclaiming his success before looking back at me.
Let me help! Let me help!
Okay. I stutter, trying to keep my composure as he pulls out another tray, proclaiming a proficiency as an assistant that is greatly exaggerated. He's more of a bull in a china shop. He's only getting the teapot.